All right, might get going here. Hi, everyone. Hopefully you're enjoying your first day here at Trailhead. Oh, thank you, folks. So my name is Aaron Ree. I'm a product design architect on the platform team here at Salesforce. And today I wanted to talk to you about moving. So recently, I actually moved my family up to Seattle. And I had some reflections during this time that might be relevant to some moving between Classic and Lightning as well. Noted that things get messy over time, and my closets were filled with a whole bunch of stuff which maybe I didn't really need anymore. And it costs to actually move things, so you've got to pack it in a box and put it on a truck and find a new place for it in your new house. And if something's not getting used, it's actually just taking up space. And lastly, something that's familiar doesn't necessarily mean that it's working well. So I've got a dishwasher in my old house that I knew how to bang to get it work right, but it doesn't mean that I necessarily want that washing machine, the dryer in the new house. And these parallels on this analogy is very similar to what you'll see when you're wanting to move from Classic to Lightning. Before I get going on the rest of the stuff, I wanted to point out that Lightning Experience Migration Assistant has everything you actually need to switch. So when you're actually looking to do this move, if you go into Setup, there's going to be a great wizard that walks you through all of the things that you'll need to actually move your org. So it's going to generate a readiness report, a PDF will be sent to you, and you're actually going to be able to see what you need to convert Classic into Lightning. And this is great from a technical perspective, because you'll know if you go down that readiness check and you tick all the boxes, technically you'll be ready to go. But that doesn't really speak to the human aspect of stuff. So really, this move from Classic to Lightning is your opportunity to rethink here. And essentially, what the talk today is about how you can not just translate your org, but actually transform it by using some user-centered design and research sort of methodologies to actually give you users the Lightning experience that they deserve. Because as we know, like Salesforce is something we use every day. It's not just a collection of lists and buttons. It's actually something that we use every day. We're trying to get our jobs done, and depending on how it's designed, it can either be a great experience or it can make our days sort of frustrating and awful. So in order to maximize this unique opportunity, we're basically going to want to look to our users and use these research methods and UX methods to transform. And when we talk about user-centered design or design thinking, there's a bunch of sort of jargon gets thrown around. Essentially what we're saying is that this is just a way of making something better for our users by making sure we understand their needs, their problems, and their goals. And we're actually creating a list of prioritized ideas that might actually solve those needs. And finally, we're delivering solutions that are actually going to be able to be both tested and improved upon over time. We're not just going to build one thing and kind of let it kind of sit there. We're actually going to look and see how our users are reacting to that and make improvements over and over again. And if we were to try to capture this UCD in a single chart, it might look something like this. Important part to realize here is that there's 5 main sort of activities that we're going to be doing during this UCD phase. And the most important takeaway here is actually the shapes that are going on here. So you'll notice that there's triangles. They're either growing or shrinking. And this is really speaking to the point that we're either creating choices or making choices. So I'm going to walk through these 5 sort of steps here of discover, define, decide, prototype, and evolve, and just cover some of the sort of the top things and tips that we use when we're trying to tackle something like this. When I was doing this deck, my daughter actually gave me a bit of critique. She said that this looked complicated and boring. So I tried to jazz it up for a little bit and ended up sort of something like this. So hopefully something you can get from here is that if we look at this, there's a lot of listening, a lot of observation, and a lot of thinking before we're actually getting into building stuff. And so this is really an important takeaway around UCD. It's a lot about listening to your users, making sure that you understand what's going on with them and their frustrations, and coming up with ideas that might solve those frustrations. So the first step here is we're wanting to basically what's called the discovery phase. This is basically where we gain the most understanding that we can so we can actually begin our project. We're going to actually want to set the stage here, make sure we actually have a team and some stakeholders involved. We're actually aligned with sort of business, what the business is trying to do. We're going to want to sort of gather what we already know and share it out with the business, make sure everyone sort of understands what we're tackling. This is your time to sort of get inspired about things and think broadly, challenge any old assumptions that the business might have had, and make sure that you're actually looking for all the new opportunities that you might be able to find. And the part that I'm going to concentrate on here is around empathy. So this is really getting to know your users, and by asking about the work that they do and understanding what they actually need to accomplish in their day. So the first kind of tip that I wanted to give here is about observing users in the wild. This is your best methodology for actually seeing what your users are really doing, as opposed to what you think they're doing or what you might expect them to do. And you want to make sure that you're letting your users sort of why you're wanting to observe them and what you're using the data to when you collect it. And if you're sort of letting them know that you're going to be using it to improve the product and actually make things better for them, they're usually pretty happy to sort of take part. Really important to record what you see in here in detail. Those notes are going to really help you out on the later phases when you're actually trying to come up with solutions to some of what you hear. And observation is different than interviewing. So you're going to want to sit back here just kind of like, I don't know, if we're in the savannah or something, we're actually going to look at wild animals. You're not going to want up and kind of go and scare them or something. So just sit back, watch what people are doing in their daily sort of activities, and you'll be able to take notes and kind of get some insights out of what their day actually consists of. And this can generate a lot of great ideas for new product improvements. When you do actually talk to users and to dive in deeper, you're going to want to ask things like, what are the things that they do every day, and get them to show you. What can be improved? Ask them, why is that? Tell me more. Make sure you're digging in with why, and you actually keep digging until you actually get to the root of the problem. Have to remember here that there's no wrong answers that the users are going to give you. Like, this is their experience in their day. So this is all about sort of having that empathy and listening to what they're having to say there. So we're going to limit our sharing. We're going to make sure that the user is leading the conversation there. And again, taking lots of notes. In terms of how you might put this into practice easily, realize that not everyone's a professional designer or researcher. But even if you just set aside like 1 hour a week to shadow your users or to talk to them, this can give you a great amount of information in terms of what they might be doing. Finding power users or people that are really passionate about various parts of the product can be really helpful, and they can kind of help gather other feedback from other people within your org. And if you do need to talk to a larger group of people rather than one-on-one interviews, simple surveys can be great in terms of gathering information really, really quickly. Moving on, once we've actually we've collected all these notes and we've talked to users, we're going to want to organize these things. We're going to want to interpret them and make sense of what you've actually discovered there. And we're going to want to structure these into what we call insights. So an example might be here that you might have taken some notes that people were like having some trouble actually getting to the right information on the page or knowing what actions to actually take. And this is going to let you be able to frame that and turn what you've learned into actual opportunities to come up with new solutions or designs for the problems your users are facing. And this phase is all about giving focus, for actually giving a starting point for that next phase, which is around creating, so generating those ideas that might solve those problems. Something to mention here is around personas. We use personas a lot at Salesforce to actually help us design solutions for various groups of people. And these personas represent groups of people that share similar behaviors, needs, goals, issues. And at the end of the day, when you use personas, you're going to know who you're designing for, what they need, and why they're asking for these things. And the important part here is that the job title doesn't actually mean or equate what someone actually does during their day. So really look to what people are actually doing and look to group those like activities rather than just saying sales manager or executive, because those sales managers or executives might actually be wearing multiple hats and they might actually be doing some other job roles as well. When we're looking to frame the problem, so we've taken our notes and we've got some insights, something that we love to use as designers is something called how might we statements. And so this is really a way that we can take those insights of what we've learned and turn them into those opportunities. It lets us explore ideas without pointing to specific solutions straight away. And it's broad enough to give us sort of a wide range of possible solutions without pointing to sort of specific solutions. And this is likely something you're going to do before you actually look to write problem statements or user stories. If you're developers and you're used to sort of writing those user stories, this is likely going to come before that, where we're actually just wanting to explore ways that we're going to solve these problems. So some examples on the left here of insights that we might have found while we're talking to users. So maybe here's an example, a lot of time spent navigating or scrolling on a specific page. So an how might me statement around that might be, how do we make key information available and more consumable? Or if the inputting is taking a lot of time, how might we make capturing that information really easy and quick during a call to a customer? So as you can see, there's no we're not talking about buttons or layouts or anything at this stage. We're really just talking about what that problem is and how we might solve it. Using Salesforce persona cards as a starting point is great. If you head over to Camp Design System, they're giving away something that looks like this. So we have captured a bunch of information about what we know to be sort of various user types of Salesforce. So that's great to go head over there. If you actually generate your how might me's with stakeholders or execs, it helps them sort of understand some of the problems that their users are facing and actually have involvement in the process there to sort of buy into what you're doing. And making sure that you actually can share your learnings from users before you actually start prioritizing or building anything is a fantastic way to make sure that you're on the right track. So once we've defined our problem, it's time to start creating things. When we go into our decide phase, really we want to look at the problem in as many angles as possible. So no ideas too crazy at this stage. It's really just about making sure that we've had as many people involved as possible. We've had sort of team members from across the business perhaps come together to do things like rapid sketching sessions and really just come up with ideas. And eventually you'll choose your best ideas and you can prioritize sort of those flows or stories that you're going to want to actually build. So sketching and ideation, a lot of people say I'm not creative, it's really scary, I don't know how to draw. But essentially, if you can draw a box and a circle and a bit of text, you're going to be awesome at doing this. And so this is just a little sort of exercise we like to use internally, less than an hour, you can gather a bunch of people together. And essentially, as you can see here, just within a couple of minutes individually, we're just going to want to quickly sketch as many ideas as possible. Choose your favorite ideas and then refine those a little bit to sort of come up with your favorites. And then as a group, you're going to want to just make sure you get everyone's favorite ideas up there, give everyone a chance to actually talk through their ideas as to why they like it and what they're trying to achieve with it. And then discuss as a team. And if need be, you might want to sketch again or break it up into multiple sessions to cover a bunch of ideas you want to work through or problems. And you can repeat this. And this can be done really easily over like a lunch break. We find that sort of getting people in with treats and sort of just paying for lunch or bringing in some donuts or something is really helpful in that regard. The other important point that I wanted to cover here is making sure that you're actually thinking about the end-to-end flows that people are actually trying to achieve rather than individual screens. So here's an example here. This is an agent persona. We've got some sort of the activities that they're actually looking to do. So things like they're managing data, they're creating and updating data, they're inputting stuff there. And so here's some key flows that they might be doing. So they might be updating contacts or updating a campaign or something. And by capturing the actual click paths that these people are actually doing, so here's an example here for Opti within Salesforce itself, you can actually make sure that you're designing that entirety there, and there's not some like big gap or problem right in the middle of what they're actually trying to do to get their job done. And by looking at these flows overall, you can actually prioritize the work that you're doing when you're actually looking to prototype something or get something built within the new system. And in terms of putting it into practice easily, talked about enticing people with treats to sort of come join a sketching session. Also, this is the time to sort of get inspired by the things. So whether they're sort of design blogs or what other people are doing on App Exchange, or shameless plug here, checking out the UX Salesforce blog. We've got some great articles there, anything from accessibility to AI to designing efficient forms, all that sort of good stuff. So use the information that's out there. You don't want to reinvent the wheel around your solutions. After we have our ideas and we've kind of come to the ones that we actually want to start building, the key takeaway I want to give away here is that there's much more value in starting lightweight, starting with paper, getting lots of ideas down quickly and cheaply, and validating that with users is really what you're wanting to do here. So you don't even necessarily have to get into code here. It's really just all about getting those ideas and flows in front of users, and making sure you can get that feedback and you're not putting in calories into things which might not actually work for users. So the last point there is making sure that you're open to making changes based on user feedback. Even as professional designers, sometimes we ship things that we think are going to be great. We go in and user test it, and it just doesn't work for some reason. So you have to be open to making changes and not kind of being stubborn about your ideas here. With prototyping, they're not meant to be perfect. You can use any tool that you're actually comfortable with. Some examples here of like some people do great stuff with paper. Some mobile designs being tested here. I've seen PMs do great stuff with Keynote or PowerPoint and actually doing click-based prototyping within a tool that they're comfortable with. This lack of visual styling that we're seeing in the paper-based prototyping can be, it can be great because it lets you concentrate on what the flows and the interactions are rather than sort of the visuals. Last point here is around optimizing screens and apps from what you know about your users. So when we've got these personas and we've got these flows defined, you'll be able to sort of really pick apart like what are the important actions these people need to take. What should the layouts be? Does this person sort of need to have a roll-up of charts as a manager, or do they need to sort of have a work list as sort of a case manager type of thing? Want to make sure that all the important information is on the screen up front for them, above the fold. Wanted to call out here that sometimes it's the right decision to actually have separate apps. Lightning lets you build separate apps for profiles and roll it out to different groups. And maybe that's the right decision to make here across these 3 different personas. And the other point here is just that mobile might actually be different. What people do on the road versus what they do at their desks can be different. So you're going to want to think about the key activities that they're doing when they're at the desk or when they've left their desk to go talk to a customer. Again, informal testing here, food, treats help. We've got designers that go to another building and sort of just set up with a desk with a donut or a coffee or something to sort of get people in, and they're able to get some great insights there. And again, just wanted to reiterate around using separate apps. And also Lightning App Builder. If people haven't played with that already, you can really quickly mock up real layouts and real screens with components, whether they're fully built or not, and actually test those flows there. Last step here, evolve. This is really about making sure that you're using iterative loops to refine your solution. We're going to want to take all those insights, the testing that we've done. Maybe you've got some usage data within the product itself to help you make some decisions here. I'm going to want to take a phased approach to actually roll out the solution. So not trying to go GA straight away or make too many changes straight away without making sure that it's sort of resonating with users properly. This is also the opportunity to share back with your stakeholders, whether this is good things, bad things, difficulties, the findings you've had, success, what you're going to work on next. This is a great time to just make sure everyone's sort of kept up to date with what the project is going on like. So this slide is really just wanting to say that at any stage in this process, whether you're sort of in the early phase and you're just trying to confirm your direction, or whether you've already gone to GA and you're just looking at adoption at scale, any one of these times you can go back and actually do further testing to sort of refine your solution. And in terms of putting it into practice here, Salesforce has a bunch of great stuff like tabs and section components for pages and record types, page templates and pre-built components, and also Lightning Design System if you actually look to build your own components and you're wanting it to make look and behave like the rest of the Salesforce interface. So make sure you're sort of not reinventing the wheel here and you're actually using what Salesforce gives you out of the box. And we already talked about gathering and using feedback at any stage of the project, but yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that even after you've gone live, you want to get some feedback, make sure that you're on course there. And just for a review here, so by creating a prioritized list of work and making sure that you're putting your effort into those the most important changes that we know that need to happen based on personas or flows that you've defined, you're able to work smarter here and make sure you're putting your efforts in the right place. And you're going to be able to work more confidently as well because we know what our users need. And our stakeholders will know that we're doing the right thing here too, so they'll have more confidence in sort of the project and your work there. And at the end of the day, it's going to let your users actually work smarter as well. So rather than having to concentrate on thinking about how Salesforce works, it's going to be tailored to their needs, and they're just going to be able to get on with their actual work rather than having to think about Salesforce as a system. So by combining UX methods and Salesforce tools, you can do smarter work that you can be confident in. Hopefully this can transform the way you and your users work by first understanding the user's needs, creating solutions that are actually going to fit some of those problems and needs there, and delivering iterative solutions that help the business actually transform properly and make Lightning a success for you. And I think that's it. I think I'm just on time here, 5 seconds to go. So I'll be around, so if there's any questions here, there's also a bunch of designers and researchers over at Camp Design System over both days. So if you have any actual detailed questions, head over that way, and I'm sure they'll be more than happy to sort of answer any questions for you. But thank you.